Welcome to Self-Centered Living, a podcast that serves as a vital platform for women of color across cultures and backgrounds to take charge of our narratives and where our voices are centered. I'm your host, Trish, and here we delve into our diverse experiences and rich humanity through a blend of personal stories and insightful discussions with a range of guests. Our aim is to foster meaningful connections and understanding among our listeners. This season, we're exploring the scripts that shape us, the ones we inherited, the ones that were imposed, and the ones that want to emerge when we can finally see them. Welcome back. This episode, we're exploring what wants to emerge. We've been looking at the scripts that run us, the ones we inherited, handed down before we can consent to them, and the ones that were imposed, pressed onto us from the outside. The work so far has been learning to see them. Once you can see the programming, you might remember the computer analogy that I used, a question opens up underneath it. A quieter, more adventurous, some may say a more dangerous one. It is what's trying to come through, what wants to emerge. I refer to this as meeting what is already here and, quite frankly, has always been awaiting your attention. So that's the territory we are exploring today. Are you ready? Let's dive in. There's a room in my house I still don't fully walk into. For 18 years, it had a sound of a kid who had an answer for everything, a smart mouth, a comeback that landed a half a second before I was ready for it. Even annoyed, I was kind of impressed. His quick wit and knack for the nonchalant roast and takedown, evidence that he is cut from this cloth. What can I say? Guilty. This room I seldom enter was home to his unbothered, not a care in the world way of being that ran straight against the way I move through the world. Fast, 3 steps ahead, managing the next thing. He left for university, and the air in the room went flat. I'd find myself in the doorway with nothing to push against, just the shape of where the energy used to be. Not long before his departure, I closed the door on the corporate world for the last time. Nearly 2 decades of work I excelled at and that funded a comfortable life for my family was now gone. Along with it, the ground, although unleveled, I had built most of my adult working life on. The wider world also had its seismic shifts. The right to decide what happens in our own bodies, gone. Women turned away from care, with some losing their lives. The gravest impact of all these changes, as usual, on women of color. And then the 2024 election cycle. I watched a woman more than qualified for the role get reduced, made into a caricature, and shrunk in real time. I'm not going to argue the politics of it. I'm telling you what it did to me. The empty room, the career I walked away from, the body no longer mine to govern, the country showing me plainly what it thought I was worth. One on top of the other, on top of the other, seemingly leaving me with nowhere to go. Heaviness with no end in sight until I felt myself coming apart at the seams. What was rising in me were grief and rage. 2 emotions we are taught to hide or to subdue. Manage them. Keep them tasteful. Cry where no one can see, and never let them catch the anger at all. An angry woman, especially of color, is a problem to be handled. So we move it along. We medicate it, spiritualize it, productivity hack it. We treat grief and rage as malfunctions to get past. But I will tell you what I did instead. I turned myself around and I walked straight into them. I went straight against the grain of what we have been conditioned to do with grief and rage. They were no longer problems for me to solve, but instead the seam, the place where I had finally come apart enough to let something out and to let something else in. The grief was telling me something I loved had ended. But as with endings, something was waiting, despite my uncertainty, to begin. The rage was telling me I was not, in fact, powerless, but I needed to discern where to direct this unbridled, unapologetic, messy, potentially destructive fire. Those two emotions that we're told to bury turned out to be the most fertile ground I had. They were the portal, not something to escape, but the way through. I'm not telling you to live in anger. I'm telling you to stop fleeing it long enough to find out what it's standing guard over. In my experience, what wants to emerge has been waiting in the exact places we were told not to look. I want to take you somewhere. For my 50th birthday, my partner gifted me a trip. I went to Costa Rica to experience the plant medicine ayahuasca. The ceremonies took place at the base of the Amazon in a structure called a maloca, a triangular great room built of timber stained a deep reddish brown, and the whole of it wrapped in the wilderness and the complaint of howler monkeys who, honestly, they kept their own hours. It was late October. The evenings came down hot and humid, with unexpected rainstorms passing through. In a maloca, you are stripped down to your studs. In a room of strangers, the cloak you normally wear, or usually wear, there's nothing normal about it, the polite dishonesty, oh, I'm good, I'm fine. You can't keep it in there. The medicine takes it. Except I wouldn't let it. My first couple of nights, I was in the battle, losing the war with myself, but fully in the battle, wrong and strong. All around me, people were purging, surrendering, coming undone, and I held on to my control for dear life. I could not be messy in front of strangers. I would not. On the hardest night, the Icaros, the medicine songs, turned piercing. The maestro sang in this high pitched, keening tone. I swear he stretched out an extra hour in this odd love devotion to one of the guides. At least that's what I convinced myself. That he was sweet on her and he was extending this piercing, painful song to express his love to her. I don't know. That's anecdotal. Either way, it was torture. Needless to say, the Icaros, how he sang them, cut through every layer of my armor like a Jinsu knife. I could not stay in that room. I bolted out several times, back and forth across a walkway, this little bridge between the Maloka and the bathrooms. My hips and my lower back were aching like I was in labor. I was wanting to release, to throw up, to throw something off, but unable to. Finally, I just stopped. Buckled over, I pressed against one side of the walkway and slid down onto the floor and laid there alone. One of the guides had been quietly watching over me from the moment I arrived at the retreat. She came out and she asked me to come back inside. I told her, no, I was fine. I just needed a minute. So she left. And then I felt it. A wave coming up from the recesses of my being, I kid you not. This guide returned. She came back with a pillow, slid it under my head, and lowered herself down onto the floor beside me. And when the wave finally broke, when I started to sob deep from the cavity of my belly in a fetal position, she sobbed quietly beside me. Here's what almost no one knew. From the first moment I met this guide, I had a knowing that she was carrying a child. She hadn't said so, it didn't show. There was no way for me to know, yet I knew. I didn't ask her that night. I didn't have to. The way she tended to me, the particular grief and love moving through her as she stayed down there on that floor with me, it confirmed what I had already felt. Days later, I asked her straight out, and she told me yes. She didn't ask me how it was that I knew. She called me a blue witch. So, two of us on that floor. Her carrying new life, feeling a mother's love for someone she had not yet met. Me laboring to birth something also. And at the very same time, being mothered, being tended to, and held. And that's when it landed for me what it means to be the mother bird and the baby bird at the same time. Because here's the thing about that old image we tell it like the mother pushes the baby from the nest, and that's that. But that's not how it actually works in a life. Often, you are both. You are the one who loves yourself enough to push, and the one who has to find out midair whether she'll fly. The mother bird in me, the one who pushed, was doing it out of love. Setting myself free, free from the held breath, the safe and practical, the drill sergeant who'd run the show for decades, the script that said do it alone or it doesn't count. And free toward all of it. The whole list of things this one remarkable life is asking us to find out about, to get curious about. And the baby bird was the part of me that had to leave the ledge with no guarantee underneath her. We are asked to do this again and again. We agree to be born, and then we agree to it again. We walk ourselves back to the ledge and we push because the nest was never the destination, not for my son and not for me. And it is also there on the floor where I finally understood epigenetics. It moved from a concept to an experience. You're probably like, epigenetics? Allow me to explain, to elaborate. A mother can carry you for 9 months, pouring all her love into the making of you. And the whole time, she's also carrying everything outside her control: the fear, the grief, the weather of whatever era she happens to be living through. Her attention may get siphoned off because life makes its demands. And that divergence, however minute, has its effect on baby. A less chaotic and subtle ripple whose effect is not a wound you can point to, but becomes a faint, unaccountable absence, a gap you can't trace to anything. And here's what undid me on that floor. The gap may not have started with my mother or with hers. It's the inheritance of generations of women loving their children while life pulled at them. Every one of them wrestling, knowing it or not, with the two poles of being alive, the joy and the woe, carried together, handed down. I had felt that gap my whole life. Something primordial, older than my own memory, older than me. And I had always read it as proof that something in me was missing. On that floor, I read it differently. The gap was never proof of a lack, it was carried. And the moment I could see it for what it was, I wasn't being asked to fill it. I was being asked to birth myself, knowing what I now knew about the woe and of the joy. And I did not do it alone. That's the part I almost walked right past. I had spent that whole season of my life certain strength meant doing it by myself, and that it was safer to do it alone rather than risk the disappointment of relying on someone who was not reliable. Because let's tell the truth, those people exist. The medicine and a woman I had known for days, sobbing on the floor beside me, showed me otherwise. At one point, laboring through life may have been a necessity, but now, in this moment of knowing and choice, the most evolutionary step I could take was to allow myself help and to no longer be afraid to ask for it. So, if something in you is trying to be born, write this into the new script on purpose. I am supported. I allow and ask for help and receive it naturally. It is not a weakness you confess. It is a condition you build in. So, here's what I'll leave you with. When you can't see the script, you just run it. Feels like fate. Feels like simply the way things are. The moment you can see it operating and turn towards what's moving underneath it, what looked like inevitability turns out to be a decision. That's the whole difference. Blind inevitability or choice. I can't tell you what wants to emerge in you. I don't know what's been waiting in your grief, or what your anger has been guarding, or the root of the ache in a gap you've never been able to name. But I'd ask you to stop treating those places as malformations. They may be the seam where you can finally come apart enough to let something through. This may or may not be a mother bird, baby bird moment for you, where you have to summon the courage and support to push yourself out of love and toward freedom off the proverbial ledge. Only you can say. I will leave you with a quote I often come back to and meditate on in times of internal unrest when I'm bursting at the seams. It's from the Gospel of Thomas among the texts found at Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt. It reads, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." A sign of what wants to emerge is that it points to your aliveness. Let that settle. So, I want you to continue to stay with us. And most importantly, because you're allowed to, I want you to stay self-centered. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Self-Centered Living. Come back next week as we continue exploring what shapes us and what wants to emerge. Our music is by Ketsu. Information on our participants can be found in the show notes. You can find me at selfcenteredliving.com. Take care until then.